The mansion gleamed under the soft glow of evening lights, its marble floors reflecting the wealth that the millionaire wielded like armor. Every corner spoke of his power. Priceless paintings, polished chandeliers, and priceless antiques lined the halls. But in that moment, wealth itself could not conceal the cruelty in his heart. He entered with a confidence that demanded attention, his tailored suit pressed perfectly, his hair immaculately styled, and a smug smile that barely concealed the arrogance in his eyes. Clutched in his hand was the hand of his newest conquest, his glamorous mistress, who moved alongside him as though the mansion itself belonged to her now. Her dress shimmered with sequins, catching the light in a way that drew the eyes of every servant, every guest who happened to glance in their direction. The pregnant wife, who had sacrificed so much for this man, her youth, her dreams, her loyalty, stood frozen in the corner of the grand hall, hands pressed lightly to her swelling belly. Her eyes reflected disbelief and hurt, the kind of hurt that could pierce through marble walls. She had been by his side through countless triumphs, through nights of his stress and days of his demands, never questioning, always supporting. And now, in this gilded palace, she watched as her life was publicly diminished. The millionaire did not even pause to introduce the woman on his arm. He simply paraded her through the halls, speaking loudly to servants and staff as if announcing a conquest. "Everything is ready for the gala," he said, his tone dripping with authority, but his gaze never left the mistress, never once acknowledging the wife who had carried his child, who had devoted herself to him completely. The mistress laughed softly, a sound sharp and victorious, as though she could taste the humiliation she had inflicted. It was clear to anyone watching that she believed she had claimed the throne that once belonged to the woman standing quietly in the corner. The wife's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands gripping her belly instinctively. She could feel the shame and heartbreak mingling with anger and disbelief. He had made his choice, and it was brutal, public, and irreversibly cruel. Every word he spoke, every laugh he shared with his mistress, carved a deeper wound. In that instant, the mansion, with all its grandeur, became a cage, a prison built not of walls but of betrayal, leaving the woman to wonder how the man she had loved so deeply could turn into a stranger so effortlessly. She retreated to the quiet of her bedroom, the grand doors closing softly behind her, shutting out the laughter and glitter of the party outside. The glow from the crystal chandelier in the hall faded, leaving her in dim light, the shadows stretching across the room like the weight of her sorrow. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands instinctively resting on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle movements of the life growing inside her. Each kick reminded her of what she had tried to protect, what she had carried with love and hope, and now that hope felt fragile, teetering on the edge of despair. Her husband's betrayal was not just a personal wound, it was an assault on the future she had imagined, on the family she had dreamed of building. Tears slipped quietly down her cheeks, not the dramatic sobs of someone seeking attention, but soft, silent streams that carried the weight of disbelief and heartbreak. She thought of all the sacrifices she had made, the nights she stayed awake nursing him through illness, the lunches she had packed to keep him energized, the countless moments she had put his ambitions above her own. And yet, none of it mattered. The woman he had chosen to parade beside him now represented everything she was not: glamorous, unburdened, triumphant. The contrast twisted in her chest, sharp and unforgiving. Confusion muddled her thoughts. Had she misread his affection all along? Was the love she had believed in ever real, or had it been a comfortable illusion, something he enjoyed until someone shinier, younger, or more cunning appeared? She felt anger rise, mingled with fear, a strange cocktail of emotions that made it hard to breathe. Fear for her unborn child gripped her most tightly. How could she protect this new life from a father who had chosen arrogance and lust over loyalty and love? Yet beneath the pain and fear, a quiet strength began to stir. She realized she would not beg, would not plead, and would not degrade herself in an attempt to reclaim what had been taken from her. She could leave, she could protect her child, she could survive. As she wiped her tears and pressed her palm against her belly, she whispered softly, "We will be enough for each other. You and I will be safe, even if he cannot see what he lost." And in that fragile vow, amidst heartbreak and betrayal, she found the first flicker of resolve, a seed of courage that would carry her forward into the unknown. The mistress moved through the mansion like a queen claiming her throne, every step deliberate, every smile calculated to display her triumph. The chandeliers reflected off the sequins of her dress, making her sparkle under the soft glow of the lights, a beacon of victory. She knew all eyes were drawn to her now, and she let them linger, basking in the attention she had long coveted. This was not merely about beauty or charm, it was about conquest. She had won, or so she believed, and she intended for the world, and more importantly, the wife, to recognize it. At the grand dinner that evening, she leaned close to the millionaire, her laughter light but filled with subtle sharpness. Each word she spoke seemed designed to remind the room of her place at his side. "I can't believe how lucky I am to be here," she said softly, her tone dripping with feigned humility, while glancing at the wife, who remained in the corner, silent and pale. The mistress's gaze was deliberate, piercing. She wanted her victory to sting, to remind the wife that she had been replaced. In private, she flaunted her influence over him. She whispered suggestions for purchases, for events, for changes in the household, and the millionaire obeyed without hesitation. Her delight was in knowing he would bend to her will, in seeing the power she now wielded simply by being present. She arranged extravagant floral displays, insisted on menu changes for private dinners, and chose the music that would play throughout the mansion, all while watching for the subtle reactions of the wife. Even servants and staff noticed the shift in atmosphere. The mistress moved with confidence, commanding spaces that had once belonged to the wife. Every gesture, every playful smirk, carried a message. She had claimed her position, and the wife was powerless to challenge it. She relished the control, convinced that the affair was permanent, that the pregnant wife would never recover her place. Yet beneath the triumph, there was a fragile layer of arrogance, a dangerous assumption that nothing could unseat her now. She had forgotten that true strength was not just in appearances or temporary influence. But in that moment, she did not care. All that mattered was the public display of victory, the knowledge that she had replaced the woman who had given everything, and the satisfaction of watching that replacement be felt, deeply, by the one she had overtaken. The night she vanished was calm on the surface, almost eerily so, as if the world itself held its breath. Inside the mansion, the millionaire and his mistress lounged in the grand living room, laughing softly over glasses of champagne, their attention entirely absorbed in each other. The house, once filled with the subtle warmth of the wife's presence, felt hollow now. Unseen, unheard, she moved silently through the shadows of the home, her suitcase carefully packed and waiting by the door. Every step was deliberate, each movement measured so as not to disturb the delicate balance of the household she was about to leave behind. She paused for a moment in the nursery, running her hand over the tiny clothes folded neatly in the drawers, her fingers lingering on the soft fabrics. This room had once been a sanctuary of dreams, a space she had imagined filling with laughter and love. Now, it was a reminder of betrayal, of promises broken, of a future she could no longer trust him to safeguard. She whispered softly to the child growing inside her belly, a quiet vow. They would be safe, they would survive, and one day, they would be free. As dawn approached, she opened the front door and slipped into the quiet streets beyond the estate. She did not leave a note. She did not write a single word of explanation. She understood that her silence would speak louder than any plea, louder than any confrontation. Her absence would be undeniable, an invisible force that would disturb his world in ways her words never could. She carried only what she needed, essentials for herself and her unborn child, leaving behind the life she had built with him, not out of spite, but out of necessity. When the millionaire awoke that morning, he noticed the emptiness but dismissed it with arrogance. He assumed she had merely retreated to her room, perhaps taking a day to herself, or sulking over the embarrassment he had inflicted. His calls went unanswered, but he did not panic immediately. Instead, he left messages on her phone, ranging from playful teasing to mild irritation. "Come back when you're done sulking," he said casually, confident in the knowledge that she would return, as she always did. Days passed, then a week, and his irritation grew. Still, he refused to consider the possibility that she might have left for good. He assumed her disappearance was temporary, a test of his power, a minor inconvenience that would soon dissolve under his charm and wealth. But the silence persisted. The bed remained untouched, the nursery door closed, and no familiar footsteps echoed in the halls. His arrogance blinded him to the storm that had already begun, a storm that would unravel his carefully curated life, leaving him exposed to consequences he had never anticipated. The first flicker of unease came as a subtle knot in his chest, something he could almost ignore. At first, he told himself it was temporary, a minor inconvenience that would pass once she returned to her room or answered one of his calls. But when hours turned into a day with no response, the tiny seed of worry began to grow. He paced through the halls of the mansion, phone in hand, dialing her number repeatedly. Each unanswered ring tightened the knot in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation that he had long believed himself immune to. He summoned the staff one by one, questioning them with thinly veiled irritation. "Have you seen her? Did she leave anything behind?" His voice was clipped, commanding, yet there was a tension beneath the surface, a subtle tremor that betrayed his growing concern. The staff shook their heads, murmuring that she had been gone since early morning, and no one had seen where she went. The mistress, sensing the shift in atmosphere, smirked and suggested she was overreacting, but even her words could not mask the truth. He was beginning to feel powerless. By the second day, he expanded his search. Private investigators were hired discreetly, contacts were called in, and friends were asked to discreetly inquire about her whereabouts. Still, no leads emerged. Each dead end only fueled the disquiet growing in his mind. He recalled the ease with which he had once controlled everything around him, bending people and circumstances to his will. Now, the one person whose heart and loyalty he had taken for granted was slipping beyond his grasp, and nothing he did could change it. Whispers began to surface, subtle at first, then louder, from those who had noticed her absence. Neighbors speculated she might have left the city. Colleagues murmured that the pregnancy complicated matters, that perhaps she had sought refuge with family. The millionaire tried to ignore it, but the rumors gnawed at him. For the first time, he realized that despite his wealth, influence and arrogance, he could not simply buy her back or command her return. The feeling of unease transformed into an unfamiliar tension that sat heavily in his chest. The mansion, once a symbol of power and control, now seemed suffocating, the walls closing in around him. His arrogance, which had always been his armor, offered no protection against the gnawing fear that he had lost her entirely. And in that fear, a dangerous clarity began to emerge. He had underestimated the strength of the woman he had betrayed, and the consequences of that miscalculation were only beginning to unfold. At first, her presence had seemed effortless, glamorous, untouchable, the perfect complement to his wealth and status. But as the days stretched on and the wife's absence became undeniable, the cracks in her charm began to show. The mistress had believed she had claimed her victory completely, that nothing could challenge her hold over him. Yet, in her confidence, her arrogance began to reveal itself. She laughed too loudly at private jokes, demanded more extravagance for herself, and subtly belittled the absent wife in ways that were meant to sting but instead highlighted her own insecurity. She strutted through the mansion with a sense of entitlement that was almost comical, relishing the idea that she had replaced the woman who had sacrificed everything. "Can you believe she just vanished?" she said one evening, leaning casually against the grand piano while swirling a glass of wine. "I mean, she left? And you're still worried?" Her tone was mocking, a deliberate jab aimed at the man she assumed had chosen her over all else. He forced a smile, but inside, unease prickled at him. Her words, meant to affirm her dominance, instead reminded him of the depth of his loss, and he felt a pang of regret he could not silence. Her manipulations grew bolder. She inserted herself into conversations with his business associates, offering unsolicited advice, and subtly undermining those who might question her influence. The millionaire, blinded by her beauty and the initial thrill of conquest, let her encroach on decisions that once belonged solely to him. Her greed was evident in the way she demanded luxuries, extravagant trips, and designer items, and each demand was delivered with a confidence that implied she deserved everything. Yet the mistress's triumph was fragile, built on assumptions rather than genuine connection. She mocked the wife's absence as if it were proof of her superiority, but she failed to notice that true strength could not be so easily usurped. Every sneer, every jest at the wife's disappearance, was a reminder that she lacked the quiet resilience and loyalty that the absent woman had once shown. Her victory was superficial, a fleeting illusion that shimmered in the opulent mansion but held no real weight against the consequences that were already beginning to stir outside its walls. The cracks in her charm revealed a dangerous combination of entitlement, arrogance, and short-sightedness, and while she believed she had won, the seeds of her downfall were quietly taking root. The millionaire, though blinded by attraction and ego, could no longer ignore the discomfort that her behavior stirred within him. For the first time, her presence felt less like triumph and more like a mirror reflecting the consequences of his choices. The first whisper reached him like a faint echo, almost too subtle to catch, but it lodged in his mind and refused to leave. A passing acquaintance at a charity gala mentioned, casually, that someone matching her description had been spotted in another city, moving with confidence, her presence commanding respect even in strangers' eyes. At first, he dismissed it, brushing the words away with arrogance, convinced that she would eventually return, humbled and regretful. But as the whispers multiplied, carried by business contacts, distant relatives, and even servants who had left the mansion, he began to feel an unfamiliar unease. What if she had truly moved on? The rumors painted a picture that tormented him. Some claimed she had found refuge under the protection of someone powerful, an influential figure who recognized her worth and ensured her safety from the world she had left behind. Others whispered that she was living a quiet, independent life, free from the shackles of a man who had betrayed her so profoundly. Each account, no matter how vague, was enough to fuel the fire of obsession inside him. He imagined her walking through sunlit streets, her head held high, her belly rounded and safe, surrounded by people who respected and protected her. Every mental image was a dagger, reminding him of what he had lost and how powerless he was to reclaim it. His obsession grew relentless. He began to devote his considerable resources to tracking her every possible movement. Private investigators were hired discreetly, asked to comb through city records, surveillance, and social media for any trace of her existence. He called old friends and family members, probing for details, piecing together fragments of information, each whisper a thread in the tapestry of what he feared to be true. Even in his empire, where power and wealth had once granted him near omniscience, he found himself thwarted by the simplicity of her disappearance. No bank records, no travel receipts, no casual sightings could confirm her location. The mistress noticed the change in him immediately. The way his eyes flickered at news, the way his attention wavered during meetings, the subtle trembling in his voice when he mentioned her name, it all revealed the depth of his distraction. Her smug remarks only fueled the fire further. "You're obsessed with a ghost," she said one evening, her tone mocking. "She's gone, and you know it." And yet, he could not let go. The whispers had become a siren song, pulling him deeper into a spiral of anxiety and desperation. Even as he attempted to maintain control of his empire, the knowledge that she might be thriving elsewhere gnawed at him relentlessly. It was no longer just about losing her physically. It was about losing the power to influence her life, the ultimate humiliation that she could prosper without him, untouched by the very man who had once claimed her loyalty. The rumors, whether true or embellished, became his obsession, a daily torment that blurred the line between reality and imagination. Months had passed since the mansion had fallen silent with her absence. In that time, the millionaire had pored over every lead, tracked every rumor, and yet nothing had brought him closer to finding her. He had convinced himself he had lost her forever, that she had disappeared into a life he could not touch. And then, without warning, she returned. Not timidly, not as the woman he had once known, but as someone entirely new. She arrived on a brisk evening, stepping from a sleek black car that seemed to announce her arrival before she even reached the mansion. Her posture was impeccable, every movement deliberate, radiating confidence and authority. She carried herself with a quiet command, a presence that demanded attention without needing to raise her voice. Her eyes, once filled with hurt and uncertainty, now shone with a mixture of determination and mystery, as though she held secrets that even he could not imagine. The millionaire froze in the grand hall when he saw her, the sight of her bringing a rush of memories that had tormented him for months. Every betrayal, every selfish choice, every moment he had underestimated her strength came crashing back. For a brief, suspended moment, he was unable to speak, unable to move, caught in the gravity of her transformation. This was not the woman who had quietly endured humiliation and heartbreak. This was someone who had reclaimed her power, someone untouchable in her own right. The mistress, who had paraded herself through the mansion for months with a smug sense of victory, stiffened at the sight. Her laughter faltered, her perfectly applied smile faltering as she took in the calm, commanding presence of the woman she had assumed was gone forever. The air between them was electric, charged with tension, unspoken accusations, and the undeniable truth that the wife had returned on her own terms. She walked slowly, deliberately, past the opulent furniture and gleaming floors, her suitcase left by the door, a symbol of her autonomy. She did not immediately address the millionaire, allowing the room to absorb her presence, allowing him to realize that nothing in his wealth or arrogance could diminish the strength she now embodied. She had changed, not in appearance alone, but in essence. Her absence had forged a resilience, a self-reliance, and perhaps a hidden power that neither he nor his mistress had anticipated. As she finally spoke, her voice was calm yet firm, carrying authority and composure. Each word was measured, deliberate, and layered with meaning. The millionaire felt his chest tighten, his regrets multiplying with each syllable. The mistress, meanwhile, retreated subtly, unsure how to confront a woman whose quiet confidence and mysterious aura threatened to unravel the fragile victories she had so arrogantly celebrated. The wife's return was more than a physical presence, it was a statement. She had vanished once, but now she returned stronger, wiser, and armed with a secret that would shift the balance of power within the mansion forever. The millionaire, for the first time in months, felt truly powerless, caught between desire, regret, and the shocking reality of the woman he had once discarded. The air in the mansion was thick with tension as the wife finally revealed the truth she had carried silently for months. She did not rush to explain herself. Instead, she allowed her presence to settle, commanding the attention of both the millionaire and his mistress. Her eyes, steady and unwavering, locked onto his, and in that gaze, he saw the depth of her transformation. A woman who had survived betrayal, who had grown stronger in absence, and who now held power he had never anticipated. "My absence was never about fear or weakness," she began, her voice calm but firm, each word deliberate. "It was about survival and preparation." She gestured slightly, and a figure stepped from the shadows, a man of influence, dignified, whose presence radiated authority. He had been her protector, her ally, and the one who ensured that she and her unborn child were safe from the chaos the millionaire had created. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. She had not vanished out of despair, she had vanished to claim safety, strategy, and leverage he had never considered. The mistress's smug expression faltered immediately. Her laughter, once sharp and victorious, died on her lips as she realized the game had shifted entirely. Every mockery, every sneer, every attempt to flaunt dominance now seemed hollow against the undeniable strength of the woman who stood before her. The wife's calm composure, backed by a powerful ally, exposed the mistress as what she truly was, a fleeting conquest, a temporary pleasure with no foundation of loyalty, integrity, or genuine influence. Then came the final, most personal revelation. She disclosed that her child, the life she had carried through betrayal, was safe, nurtured, and thriving, beyond his reach and beyond his ability to claim. It was a subtle yet devastating reminder of all he had lost, not only the woman he had abandoned but the very future he had assumed was his by default. Each word he heard was a reminder of the irreversible consequences of his choices, a cruel mirror reflecting the depth of his arrogance and the emptiness it had wrought. The power dynamics within the mansion had shifted completely. The wife, once marginalized and silenced, now stood at the center of authority. She was unshakable, untouchable, and triumphant in her quiet, meticulously executed return. The mistress, who had so confidently paraded her temporary victory, slunk back into the shadows, exposed and diminished, powerless in the face of a woman who had truly claimed her strength. The millionaire, left alone in the opulent space that had once symbolized his dominance, felt the crushing weight of regret. Wealth, influence, and desire had offered him nothing in the face of loyalty, courage, and love. He realized too late that his arrogance had destroyed what mattered most, and that some losses could never be reclaimed. As the wife walked past him, her head held high and her future secured, He understood the ultimate truth. Power could be flaunted, but it could also be earned, and she had earned hers through resilience, courage, and an unbreakable spirit he had chosen to betray.